Hi guys, I hope you've been well. I've been away, which is why I'm so late, but now, at last, after an interminable run of theropods, PNSO has finally delivered a non-theropod at long last. This time, an ankylosaur, the long elusive Zuul. If you love ankylosaurs, Zuul is a real treasure indeed. It's exciting for being the first ankylosaurid known from a complete skull and tail. In addition, just like Borealopelta, skin and osteoderms were also preserved in situ, so these two are the best preserved representatives of their respective clades, and most coincidentally, both were described in 2017. The name Zuul refers to the demon Zuul from Ghostbusters, which left an impression on me not so much because of Zuul itself, but because I had such a crush on Sigourney Weaver back then. It's also one of those whose specific name is so cool I have to mention it, from the Latin crus, meaning leg, which in anatomy is the part between the knee and the ankle, and vastator, meaning destroyer. We have cruri vastator, which collectively reads as destroyer of shins, and probably a good description for most ankylosaurids. Zuul has been estimated to have been 6 meters or 20 feet long. Now, this model measures about 17.5 centimeters or 6.9 inches, which is about 1 to 34 scale. Now for 1 to 35, it makes an adult of 6.1 meters or 25 feet. Now here's how he'd look next to a 1 to 35 humanoid. Now, for the overall color. When I first saw the release images, I was disappointed, to be honest. I thought the paint looked very basically dabbed on without much complexity, almost like what I'd expect from Safari or Collecte. And sad to say, in hand, this is indeed true. For example, you see here in these keratinous bits an almost uniform paint application, and I think you can see very little of the complexity you associate with PNSO. There are some complexities in the ossicles between the major osteoderms or scutes here, but where you'd most expect an opportunity for complexity to be seized in the keratin of these large osteoderms, there's nothing much here. This is especially egregious given PNSO's past standards. But you'll judge more for yourself as we go over the model. Now first of all, even though the Zuul paper came out in 2017, only the skull and lower jaws had been fully prepared and figured, and the tail club partially prepared. And since then, I know of no paper that's given a full description of the rest of the animal, except for this paper published last year in 2022, which does show some more detail, almost incidentally to the main point of the article. So I'll assess the anatomy of this model based on these two papers. Now first, the head. And you can see immediately the detail that PNSO has given this small model. So first of all, let's talk about the caputaguli, which are quite distinct between genera. The 2017 paper goes into great detail here, so that really helps. Now, not taking away from the fact that the sculpting is really very nice as per usual, there are some deviations. Now first, an autapomorphy is a frontonasal caputaguli being imbricated, meaning overlapping, and peaked. As you see, this doesn't look like the case, appearing more tessellated to me, which is unfortunate because being an autapomorphy, this is something I would have really liked to see. Another autapomorphy are prominent furrows on the squamosal horns, but these would have been covered by keratin in life anyway. So, not necessarily something you can or even should see. Then there are non-autapomorphic features, for example the prefrontals, the frontoparietals, and the middle supraorbitals are pyramidal. It's a little hard to see here, but I do believe that all of these look flat to me. To be honest though, I'm having a hard time differentiating them, and maybe the guys at Paleo Nerd can help with this. Or you could just call this wearing down. The posterior supraorbital, however, is nicely pointed, as should be the case. And from the top, the squamosal horn protrudes to behind the rear edge of the skull roof, like Sculosaurus, but unlike Euoplocephalus. It seems like that is indeed the case. However, in this same orientation, from the side, you'll see that downturning of the skull with this rather steep fall-off. This isn't the case with Zuul, as you can see a rather straight form here. If anything, it reminds me of the skull of Euoplocephalus instead. Now I know that's nitpicking a bit, but since it's so well described, I would like to have seen more of it reflected here. And the mouth is open, which is a refreshing look. PNSO has deliberately made the choice based on suggestions that some dinosaurs were cheekless to do away with that pouch look you may have gotten used to. And there's a wide and truncated snout, which we do indeed see here. The bony nostrils are front-facing, but we know that the actual soft tissue opening might not be centered over that. And now the body. When it was first described in 2017, the body hadn't been prepared yet. And since then, an article by Arbor et al. Was published in 2022, just last year. And while the main thrust of that article is that ankylosaurids probably use their tail clubs more for interspecific combat than defense, what's relevant to us is that we can see a rough layout of the uncovered osteoderms. Now, comparing these to our Zuul, we'll see that you have these parasagittal ones, about 9 each, which is correct. Then see this partial row, which is exact in number. And now here in the periphery, we see these pointed ones on the PNSO, which are more dorsomedial than in the schematic. Then these lateralmost ones in the model may be these ones in the schematic. Cao Chuang is well aware of the 2022 paper and even mentions the damage described in that article. And here, these ones are created as full, pointed osteoderms. He even mentions that the models were designed such that if you put them side by side, the clubs are at the right level to create the kind of damage mentioned in the paper. So it's very well researched and thought out. I should also add how beautifully PNSO has created the osteoderms, taking just this one as an example. Now you'll see that each raised ridge here corresponds to a scale, and this was done very deliberately, so the whole effect is a corrugated interlocking visual. The other thing is that, assuming no taphonomic deformation, the actual shape seems to be broader and more rotund in the schematic than in our Zuul here, which by comparison looks a little narrow. So osteoderms wise, in general, with maybe some question as to the placement of some of the more lateral osteoderms, I'm very happy with it. It's just the width-to-length ratio that I'm not sure about. Now so much for that. Now, a once-over of the body, the scutes. And here you can really see why I feel it's too simply painted, especially in the keratinous areas, which is really too bad because PNSO being PNSO, look at all that detail between the larger scutes. The smaller ones, ossicles almost, are so varied in detail, and you notice that these actually have a wash over them to really bring them out. Down the forelimbs. Again, it's nice to see some forearm scutes here, but again, I wish the paint could have done it better justice. And now the hind limbs, which look a little smooth to be honest. and then the underside with very fine detail, and actually with a rather nice color to it. And finally, we come to the tail, which is the other part described and figured in detail in the first 2017 paper. Excluding CO9, 10, and 11 comprising the tail club, there are 8 pairs of caudaled osteoderms, 3 pairs where the mobile vertebrae are, and 5 on the stiffened handle. And indeed, we have that in our PNSO, so that's really great. Now, an autapomorphy in Zuul are these lateral caudal osteoderms, starting with the 5th pair to have a strongly concave leading edge. So you see this kind of scalloping here, and I'm delighted to see that represented. Interestingly, these 5 on the stiffened handle are the first ever discovered in an American ankylosaurid. Previously, their existence were only speculated about, so it's nice to have some evidence. The 8th pair is very small, and on one side almost obscured in the holotype. Now here, PNSO has opted for a more symmetrical manifestation. In addition, based on other ankylosaurids, Zhao Chuang also gave our Zuul this speculative lower row of lateral ventrally pointed spikes, acknowledging that there's no evidence for this. Another autapomorphy is the tail club being dorsal-ventrally flattened to height to length ratio of less than 0.2. And here we see that it is flattened, though I'll pass on measuring the ratio to such exactitude. Let's just say it's flattened enough for me. Now, non-autapomorphic features are the fact that these lateral osteoderms are proportionately larger and more sharply pointed than in Namek formation ankylosaurines, such as Diplodocus and this indeterminate ankylosaurid. I think you see that nicely illustrated here. And down here in the club, the major osteoderms were not symmetrical, with the left being longer, and very happily, this is what we see in the PNSO. I'm delighted, and I think that PNSO has it pretty much spot on. Now we can do a quick once over. Now, so much for the model itself. Now, the comparisons. Now, looking at the phylogeny here, the closest is the Ankylosaurus, so let's do that first. Now, this is the PNSO Ankylosaurus. I also have the Safari Limited Ankylosaurus. Then the other PNSO Ankylosaurin, the Pinacosaurus. And on the other side, we have the best preserved nodosaurid ever, Borealopelta. Now here's the PNSO Borealopelta, also described in 2017. And I've always dreamt of having these two side by side, as I just can't resist the allure of that symmetry. Now finally, let's look at some Judith River Formation dinosaurs. We have the Spitosaurus. Here is the PNSO, the Spitosaurus. And the 好龙骨. The PNSO Gorgosaurus, of course. And finally, my standard size comparators, the PNSO Wilson T-Rex, and the PNSO Cameron T-Rex. So that's it for the PNSO Zuul. In my opinion, there are some inaccuracies, and real experts can advise me, especially in my reading of the Cranial Caputaguli. But overall, I'm really pleased with how closely this model approximates the findings, incorporating not just the 2017, but the 2022 paper. Now, PNSO is really so vigorous in most of its scientific referencing that a model like this is a pleasure to study. I do wish that the body was slightly wider, and of course, the poverty of color complexity doesn't do the model justice. This looks like a job for J. Carrier. Now, this is a really very exciting release, not just because of the dinosaur, but also because it marks an inflection point upon which PNSO turned to non-theropods. I just never understood the strategy of saturation leading to staleness for the theropods, so however good each one was, people would just wait and see and pick and choose. Or spreading them in the mix would have made each one an exciting reveal and prompt more people to buy. And not to mention, excite and delight us with surprises. And hopefully, that's what PNSO will be giving us going forward. Well, that's it for this review, and I'll see you in the next video.